It is a dance of the moon, the ice moon. A very special moon that we all get to experience once in our lifetime. The moon that shuts us down, the moon as it moves around the wheel, this clock turning, ticking, closing down one thing after the other, step by step. So there is a specific mechanism inside of us in specific places that triggers what is the termination of our life's process. It is certain chemistries and codons and aspects of those codons. And it is a certain chemical component, these components that are released at specific times. So basically what they do is they slowly shut down the vehicle. Now they don't just and only shut it down. They prepare it in many ways for that approach of death itself. This is true across the board, even if there is going to be an accident that takes somebody's life, according to Ra. So this sequence and the 5 hexagrams that are involved in this sequence are there in the wheel, and they're there in our designs. So what we're reaching into is Rave Cosmology Semester 3, Death, Dying, and Bardo Stages. This is Lesson 2, and that's from page 27. So it's something to see very clearly that month after month after month, the moon is constantly going through these particular gates. Here, we start with the 10. Okay. That was the 10. And now we have this movement to the 3. From stage 1 with the 10 to stage 2, the 3. This movement to the 3 from stage 1 to stage 2. We then go into the second gate. And then we go into from the second gate to the 29th gate. And then from the 29th gate, we move up to the 14th gate. So we have these stages of the death process that are initiated by that ice moon. So every single person is initiated into the potential of their natural death through this sequence. Stage 1 is right here, up at the top, where we can see the 30th of January, 2011, when Ra went into his stage. And so we're going to go explore them piece by piece, following the moon. So here was stage 1, gate 10, line 2, the hermit. The withdrawal from life, it's the completion of form. Learning the successful sidestepping of behavioral requirements through isolation. Mercury exalted, where mental functions enrich aloneness. This is independent behavior through isolation. Mars in detriment, the angry exile, little typo there. Isolation to preserve independent behavior in the face of conditioning. So we can see the 30th of January 2011 at 3:33 p.m. This 10th gate is the gate of behavior, as we know. And the thing that's so extraordinary about the 10th gate as a roll gate, because yes, we know it's the most complex of all those roll gates because it's got so many different ways it can go. It's that the 10 opens up to integration with the 20, with the 34, with the 57. Here we have the roll for survival, the roll for survival. And as a love gate, remember it's transcendent as well as personal love. It does dual duty, the only love gate that does that. It's a gate of the potential to love oneself or not, but it's the gate of loving oneself in the world or not, and being in life as well. So everything about this 10th gate is about the deepest identity connection to your life force itself. As this is the gate of behavior, this is the first trigger. In our stage 1 here, there again we have the description, and here's the full time, that imprint there. This 10th gate is magical, this withdrawal from life, See, withdrawal from life. And this readiness to have the correct behavior to leave the plane, to change the behavior. How different the behavior for life and the behavior for dying. They're different. And so I don't forget to share. One of the people that was very close to Ra, as far as in this process of his journey through life, they actually held a seance after he died, much years later, I believe, after he died. And when they contacted him, he said, it wasn't what I expected. So he knew the Bardo stages, but the after effects, what after words, what that would be like. What they got was, it wasn't what I was expecting. But here was the initiation of the death process. So then we move to the 3. The 3rd gate is dealing with beginnings, dealing with the life force, dealing with mutation. Yeah, it's difficulty at the beginning. So if we move to when that happened, 9th of February 2011 at 12:45, here we have the 3rd gate, pulse compression and magnetic field mutation. 4th line is called charisma. We're learning about the innate quality which attracts valued guidance. Neptune exalts. Psychic, attunement that magnetizes nurturing. A psychic energy which attracts nourishment and ensures ordering. Mars in detriment, where the demands of the ego lead to rejection. Confused energy that needs nourishment but is generally rejected. So we can see the 3rd gate turns off its openness and its readiness for the vehicle to deal with anything new. It's shutting down the receptivity of the vehicle. It's shutting down, in essence, the whole mutative program. So no more mutation once you're dead. No mutation, no stagnation. Or actually, no mutation, it's now stagnation and death because it's shutting it all down. So no more ordering out of limitation. Everything's just shutting down. So you'll notice this term, again, pulse compression. The term is pulse compression for the 3. And Ra says that this is the space between the pulses and it's getting narrowed. So basically, what that is doing is that it's turning off our fertile mutative capacity. That's what's getting turned off. So the compression of the pulse. It's very important to see that this 3rd gate carries a real triggering influence because it goes beyond what is almost psychological. When you think about the way the 10th gate triggers it through the behavior. Remember we were talking about behavior there? Triggers it through how quickly our behavior, because it's related to survival, that the behavior is reflected on by the personality. And if you know about what they say about Bardo stages is that you're reflecting, right, about what happened in your life. So the behavior is reflected on by the personality, because remember, the personality is still hanging around, even though the magnetic monopole and the design crystal are long gone. The personality is hanging around, reflecting on its behavior. But when you get to the 3, this is different. You're getting to the vehicle itself, and that moment that you deal with the vehicle, you deal with something that becomes concretized. Pulse compression is something that's going to take away your creative juices. So no more mutation in the body. So then we go from stage 2 to stage 3 in gate 2. We move to the driver. This is the magnetic monopole and the 2nd gate. And 10th of February 2011, Genius. This happened at 6:36 p.m. for Ra. It's the responsibility of this magnetic monopole to bring us in at the right place and the right time. That's its function, yeah? It's the arm of the streetcar. So here in stage 3, what the 2 is doing, that ice moon is doing in the 2, I should say, it's the coordinates for the door. It's our magnetic monopole alignment, what the 2 is. So here we have unconscious and unlearnable alignment of stimulus and response, the natural. Saturn exalts, the inner strength to focus and realize. a natural gift for unlearnable knowing. Mars detriments, genius is madness. Knowledge exclusively as power for the enhancement of the ego, or the delusion that knowledge is power. So our magnetic monopole brings us into the right place at the right time. It's intended to drop us off in the right place at the right time. That's its job. So when you look about at the movement to the second gate, it's about understanding that the monopole is taking this direction towards death. Towards death. The ice moon taking us towards death. Okay, so it's something to see that when the second gate is reached in this cycle and the monopole signals, what it's actually doing is it's preparing for the opening of a gate that is exactly opposite the 60th gate. It's the exit, it's the door, and it is there. That is the coordinates for the door for the exit through into death. I believe he died in April. We're going to click from the stage 3, the moon moving to stage 4, the 18th of February 2011. Once you get beyond that, once the monopole has set the direction in motion, you come to the most extraordinary of gates, this 29th gate. And now here, I love this gate. It's so fascinating to know more about this and then to reflect. If you have this 29 in your life, reflect on how it shows up in your life. 29th gate is saying no to the cycle, and it's when the body, instead of saying yes to life, it starts to say no to life. It's done. No more life. So here the sixth line, stage 4, confusion. The state, learning about the state that exists when momentum outstrips awareness. 18th of February 2011. 11:22 a.m. Mars exalted, driving blind, and given Mars's energy and determination often blind luck, the power to persevere that makes no sense. Jupiter detriment, a tendency in confusion to withdraw rather than accept the condition and continue to persevere. The power in confusion to caution rather than saying yes. So at the core of how duality operates in the Maya is the 29, which is a decision gate. It's a yes-no gate. It's the gate that says yes to life. It's the gate that says yes to being human. It's the gate that says yes to going through this process on this physical material plane. It's the great gate of yes. It's a generative force. And in the entire sacral center, Ra says there's nothing like this 29th gate. Absolutely nothing like it. So there's this enormous power to make a commitment with the 29 to the life experience. That saying yes to life has to be shut down, and the ice moon does that. So this is the final locking the door and throwing away the key. Because if you go beyond this and you're in the sequence, there's no turning back. So there's no getting out of the death process. As time marches on, you come to your inevitable end. So, as far as the body is concerned. In other words, this is the place where there is a point of no return. 29 saying yes or no to life. That's the trigger, the 29th gate. So it's a trigger not simply to saying no to the life experience, but saying yes to death, yes to dying. And the ability to say yes to dying is through that ice moon and the 29th gate. Personal pause. I can remember really feeling like I was on my deathbed in 2020, where I just couldn't move. I could not move. I could feel in the body this weakening and not wanting to go on, and how much pain and suffering, and understanding why people would want to, really want to die. I'd have been suicidal ideation before, but I imagine at this point, when you get to that place, maybe a kind of either calm settling in, accepting one's fate. It's one of the ways my mind was identifying with. I can see how this could come to an end, and I would be okay with it because of, letting go of that commitment to saying yes to life. Now, here we can saying no to the cycle, the weakening of the body, This moment that there is no longer a yes to the experience of life, the body is not strengthened anymore, so it flips and now starts to weaken. Ra says that the weakening is necessary because there's not going to be death without it. The body is going to begin to deteriorate. So, if you are somebody who works in hospice and you've got a 46 gate or you've got a 2946, somewhere else in Ra's materials, he was saying that these are people who can face that moment and move beyond it and still say yes because of the conditioning. For me personally, it's like, well, but when it's your time, you know? So I was just curious, interested in that because my daughter has the 2946, my husband has the 46. You know, 46 is the mother gates for all fears of the splenic center for the body dying. So it lends that influence before you get to this phase. But once you get past this phase, there's no going back. Okay, the body begins to deteriorate. Let me check the chat here. Ra died March, yes, thank you for sharing. March 12th, 2011 at 6:30, so you can see we're in February. He was still teaching right up until the day before, I believe. Very close to his death. Hi, Naraya. Naraya says, I can say this is true. I've saved 2 people that were ODing. Interesting. Yeah. And Lisa says, my mother has a 46. She's ushered so many people to the other side. Jean has the 46 and volunteered at hospice to send patients away some time ago. Yeah, when I was younger, I did the hospice training. I was like 19 or something. And the moment I was placed in somebody's house with AIDS and they were dying, after that first session of being there with them, I never went back. I couldn't. My undefined splenic center, my own fears of death, really couldn't face it, couldn't handle it. The feeling that I got in that place of his home as he was passing. Okay, so the moment that we enter into, from the 29, we're moving up to the last stage here, stage 5, the ice moon in the 14. This is where we are surrendering to God, to the forces, to fate, destiny, karma, chaos, whatever it is you anthropomorphize death as. This brings us to the energy for surrender. We know that this is the realm of Hades up here, where the 14 is. So it makes sense that the final stage would be in his realm. And it brings us the energy for surrender in the deepest way that one cannot do anything about it. So in the keynoting for Ra, it was the 24th of February, 2011, 2:20 p.m. Disengagement and irreversible deterioration. This is the line of wealth and power at its most exalted. 6th line is humility. Sun exalts the enlightened recognition that material success is God's will. Spirituality is the key to acceptance and the source of power. And when we have the detriment with Earth, all manifestations of this position are essentially positive. The Earth represents the existentialist recognition that material success was unavoidable and the humility engendered by such serendipity. Existentialism as the key to acceptance and the source of power. So what this 14 does, this energy for surrender in the deepest way that you can't do anything about it, it's not being able to reverse it or change it. All you can do at this stage is embrace it. Ra says, nothing more, nothing less. That's the stage. So what happens here is that you have this disengagement of the gearing and the driving of it. The 14, we know, impacts the driver. Now it's the opposite in the wheel of the magnetic monopole, that driver in the 2nd gate. So it's like it takes away power from the driver, but it does more than that. It impacts the vehicle itself, this ice moon. In other words, this driving force, the moon, this gearing force, this gear mechanism, pushing of this trident, forward. Now it's just beginning to coast, because it doesn't seem to be running under its own power anymore. We're just coasting, a petering out in that sense. Ra would talk about 14 as the gas pedal, so there's no more gas. We're just coasting. This is the disengagement. And of course, because we are dealing with the energy that fuels the material self, the deterioration that's taking place is a deterioration that's happening at the deepest level in the form. So in other words, it's happening regardless of where you look, from cell to cell, organ to organ, from endocrine gland to endocrine gland, whatever it is that we're looking at. Here, what we're looking at here is that there is no longer this abundance that is being offered by the power of the 14. Remember, the 14 is wealth and power at its most exalted. The image of it is this loaded down wagon with tremendous wealth. Yeah, the 14 is a wealth gate. So at this point, it's when the wagon is emptying out. It's no longer being replenished. It's just simply leaking away. It's your life drifting away. So everyone has a doorway that is separate. Claire is saying, do we know if Ra was sensing or knowing anything about his death before it occurred? That is a really good question. I can remember something, but I don't know exactly what. Does anybody else recall in some of the materials? I don't think it came in the materials to me. That's why I'm not remembering precisely what is said, because when people say stuff, it's very hard for me, unless I hear Ra saying it over and over, or read it and it really hits me, that I recall exactly what was said. It's very rare, very short. I can remember him saying things about wanting to be around, before these things happened, but I can ask Jacqueline and see if there was anything. Maybe I don't feel comfortable doing it right now. We have a work and somewhat personal relationship where we see each other on a regular basis, but maybe when I start teaching death, dying, and Bardo, I'll ask her. Shadi was saying he was warned not to take a trip, and he went anyway and got pneumonia. Yeah, he did. I heard that it was pneumonia and that he was teaching right up until his death. He left a lot of classes in the middle of his passing. Once the sequence has been completed, that is, once the movement has gone from the 10 to the 14, in the movement of the moon beyond the sequence, sometime between the moon leaving the cusp of the 14 and before it can re-enter it, that's when actual death takes place. So everybody gets timed in the same way, but everyone has a separate doorway after that. So everybody releases through a specific doorway, is what he says. This is the sequence that is about preparation. That is, a preparation that sets one up on the permanent dying track, is how he wants to put it. And in setting one to the permanent dying track, setting one up and preparing one for the movement outwards, the journey, that journey of leaving the form behind. So this is the moment that the moon transits out of the 6th line of the 14th gate. At any moment in the cycle, from that point onward, you can go. Okay, so looks like it's not a percentage arc, specific, because if it were, everybody would die on the same day, and then we'd all be very uncomfortable. Imagine it being in the 42, yeah? Oh my God, okay, so everybody's praying the day before the 42 hits, the moon hits the 42, because everybody would be dying on that day with the moon in the 42. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So, any point. All have separate doorways. Oh, we have more slides. Hang on. We have this lock. Okay, there. We have this connection between the design crystal and the magnetic monopole. There's the design crystal, and here's the magnetic monopole. And we get this what we get between those two is a lock. The lock of the design and the monopole is one. The moment that they are one, that is when we have a physical death, where there is a stopping of the heart and we have a dead brain. So there's the personality crystal hanging around as those two leave. So though the moon is the dying trigger, and that it will actually go to the point where somewhere in that cycle, where it's going to click in and death is taking place, in fact, it's actually the Earth, transit Earth, that is establishing that sequence. So in Death, Dying, and Bardo, we dive into more of this, and here's the Bardo stages of the decarnated personality crystal now. Decarnation is a sequential trinary process. The sequence is determined through the geometry of the Earth at death through resonance. Yeah, so it's the transit Earth at death through resonance. So when we're looking at the moment of death, what we're looking for is the position of the Earth and the importance of the line. So here's the line values. 1 is time, 2 is surrender, 3 is chaos, 4 is passage, 5 is reunion, and 6 is vision. So there's an interpretive value to the minor degree relative to the gate, because that's what lines are. What is important here is that we are opening up the Bardo sequence itself, and it is the line that is going to be the key in establishing that sequence. What you are looking at are keynotes for the lines, the death keynotes. So now the fact that the Earth is in 47.5 there, means that this person's Bardo is going to begin with the 5th sequence. So in other words, their sequence is going to begin with the 5. Now the decarnation is a sequential trinary process. In other words, you don't go through all 6 of the line values. You only get 3 in a row. So everybody's Bardo is going to be a different sequence depending on what line value they died on. So here, whoops, I clicked too many times. Here you only get 3 in a row. Here we have the situation of the Earth in the 5th line, and the sequence is reunion, and then vision, and then time. Okay, reunion, vision, and time for Ra. Anyway, his sequence. So here's the reunion. 47.5 Earth, the Saint. This position has special significance in that there is no planet in detriment. Here's Ra's journey through the Bardo, stage 1. Venus exalts, the gift in times of oppression, to maintain without hypocrisy a harmonic relationship with one's oppressors, while providing aid and succor to the oppressed. Realization at its most exalted, acceptance of the weight of the abstract process, and the grace that naturally follows. Here we have no polarity, because there's no polarity there. So it didn't have to be that Ra had a Venus up here. It's just no polarity. But Venus is a strong exaltation process there. So the transit cross that he left on was the left angle cross of informing. And Ra says, let's just keep in mind the mechanism of the way in which this operates. We have a time of death, and we're looking at the position of the Earth. It's the line of the Earth in resonance to those keynotes, to these lines where you have your Bardo sequence, that there are 6 potential steps in the sequence, and everybody gets 3. So obviously it's related to when you enter into that moment, what that position is. Yeah? So wherever it is that you entered, here it's reunion for the Earth. So the first stage was 11 hours and 28 minutes for Ra. Thank you for the calculations. It's also clear that you don't always get the same amount of time. This is something to grasp, Ra says. Your first stage may be 20 minutes, it may be an hour, but it isn't necessarily going to be 24 hours, which is also a possibility, as we know, depending on when you die. So we look at the Earth, we look at the line. Earth, oppression, gate of realization is where it was, a restrictive and adverse state as a result of internal weakness or external strength, or both. When we look at the line, what we're looking at here with the saint is that we're looking to see that line, and in that line only, it doesn't relate to anything else. What are the planets that are listed as exalted and detriment? In this case, we have Venus. It's important to know whether they are exalted or detriment. In the 47.5, we have Venus that is exalted in that line, and we have no polarity. So here's the guardian then. The guardian was Venus. The second step, you go to the planet at the moment of death. So in other words, this is the same chart, what we have here. We go to the Venus, 19, line 5. Here's the gate of approach, the gate of wanting. That all things are interrelated is apparent and manifested through the action of approach. So remember, the Venus was the exaltation, and there was no planet in detriment. So here's the 5th line, sacrifice. The need to limit personal potential in order to achieve a larger goal. Earth exalts the self-restraint fundamentals of such a nature, energy to keep one's sensitivities restrained. Okay. So everybody, each and every one of us, when we leave this plane, the guardians that open the door for us, they pronounce on our lives. Ra says it's really something to think about. They actually describe what our general holistic process has been. Why was that person here? What were they here for? So here was what Ra was here for. The energy to keep one's sensitivities restrained. The need to limit personal potential in order to achieve a larger goal. You can see it was creating a harmonic channel thanks to his Venus in his own design, his natal design, the 49.5. So we had a fully resonant channel with the guardian of the transit of his death cycle. And Ra says, again, it's one of those incredible things about death knowledge that was given to me, is that it has no value to the dead, if you know what I mean. In some ways, I think it allows us to see what kind of continuity was in fact in the life. Because when the guardians open the door, they really describe you. Any of you that survive me, do take a look. It should prove to be very interesting. So here we have Bardo stage 2, vision. The Earth transit was going through, again, still the oppression, gate of realization, 6th line, futility. A difficult position for which there is no exaltation. It's a bold blue line, learning line. The sun in detriment, where the strength of will alone may find a way to adapt and survive, but without hope of ever overcoming the oppression. Life as an ordeal, stripped of realization. And then his final stage 3 through the Bardo. The Earth transit went into 1st line of the next gate. And this is, 1st line is about time. So this is now the gate of conflict, the gate of friction, intimacy, awareness. Bold blue is the realization that wasting one's resources against overwhelming odds is not courage, but folly. Pluto exalted, the power of regeneration that can embrace retreat as a phase and not a failure. The emotional stability to accept conflict. Mercury detriment, the inferiority complex, where retreat is experienced as personal weakness, emotional instability in times of conflict. So his Bardo ended with Earth, leaving the 6.1 at 13 hour 13 and 4 minutes on March 14th. And that was in 2011.